recently, even as it pertains to relationships and love, I saw a news article about the U.S. banning any official from having sexual relations or romantic relationships with any Chinese national.
Yeah. Now, this honestly was a story that this was a story when I saw it, I didn't know how to feel.
Right.
Because I will say I've done research on the histories of sexual stereotyping of Asian women.
Yeah, sure.
And actually a huge contributor to that was American military and government personnel in East Asia.
Yeah.
Whether it was sex work or whether it was locals, Vietnam, Korea, Okinawa, China, Taiwan.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of actually the sexual stereotypes and demeaning stereotypes around Asian women came from exactly this. They're there, they're going to have sex. And
so how did you feel about when this came out? Were you like, yeah, good? Or were you thinking, wait a minute, that's kind of weird?
Honestly, yeah. Okay, so this is the thing, right? 1875.
Yeah.
1875, 1872, the Page Act outlaws Chinese women immigrating to America.
Yeah.
Because the law frames all Chinese women as potentially immoral degenerates, essentially saying that they're all sex workers.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're seeing here. Now, obviously, sex worker, spy, this conflation of any Chinese woman that's there is potentially dangerous.
Yeah.
That's the parallel that I'm seeing is there's this framing again of all of this entire country of women.
Yeah.
They're all potentially sneaky spies, CCP,
operatives.
Agents. Yeah. And it goes back to what you're saying that this is scratch that. It feels just like an escalation.
Yeah.
It feels like an escalation of seeing Asian people as potentially dangerous.
Yeah,
and that's not good.
That's why I'm real issue with it.
Yeah.
When you say that you can't be with a Chinese national, right? Anyone from the U.S. government can't be with a Chinese national. That implies that any Chinese national can be
compromising,
a spy or compromising, or have some type of nefarious motives. Like going back to the honeypots that we were talking about.
Yeah.
These women who are just spies or men for that matter, using sex as a tool to become a spy. I think it's dangerous because what does that do to people here in the U.S. when they're looking at any other Chinese national? The government saying that we can't even have a relationship with you because you guys might be spies.
It's this might not age well. I'm pretty sure in the next year we're gonna see a hate crime.
Yeah.
Based on somebody misidentifying an Asian American or an international student or someone as a CCP spy. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we're only a few months off from that.
I hope you're wrong, but I have my doubts.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'll take a step beyond that. Someone may justify a criminal act.
Definitely.
By just saying, I thought that was a spy.
Whether or not they actually believe that.
Correct.
They're going to use that to plead insanity or to plead not guilty.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or just not even in the court of law, talking to a police officer, talking to an ICE official.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe this person who rejected me sexually. Immediately I can say, you know what? I have suspicions that this girl or guy is a spy. ICE, come detain. And as we know right now, ICE just has to look at a tattoo of a mother and a father and say, oh, you must be a Salvadorian, some gang member from South America. Let's deport you to El Salvador.
Yeah.
What are they going to do with a spy? And where's the rule of law? There isn't any.
completely gone.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the scary, I always like to say, the slippery slope of when you do limit any person's right.
Yes.
How that can be distorted and abused. And that's just straight up not right. And it shouldn't be what America stands for.
Yeah. And I think we also have to address, too, like, to Asian Americans, right?
Yeah.
To all Asian Americans out there, just because you're Chinese doesn't mean this is going to go better for you. Like, you know, I've seen, you know, sometimes there's, you could say more conservative, or you can frankly just say, you know, anti-communist Asians who say, you know, hey, the CCP is getting what they deserve, or, you know what, this is fine. Like, you know, we don't need another communist empire breathing down our necks.
Yeah.
What I'll just say is you might be right, but just know that when you're walking down the street, when they see your last name, when, you know, you're at a job interview, you are lumped in with all of us. Whether you're Chinese, whether you're another ethnicity, whether you come from China, whether you're born here, all of this anti-Chinese sentiment is going to affect you.
Yeah. I mean, I want to avoid race as much as I can.
Yeah.
I want to feel like, all right, it's a colorblind society. Even if it's not colorblind, like, we
Wouldn't it be
don't
great?
have a glass ceiling.
Yeah.
We can do whatever we want. We could be the best American that we can. You know, I'm not saying I used to think that. I still think that.
No.
But you can't just discount that. If there is anti-Asian, anti-Chinese, and it used to be anti-China, now it's really more anti-Asian because of these, along with these tariffs.
Yeah.
You know, people are talking smack about Vietnam, Philippines, you know, Thailand. Oh, they're screwing us. They're charging 90% tax, which is all false anyways.
Yeah.
But it's creating a narrative now around Asia stealing American jobs. And that will affect us as Asian Americans. No one's going to say, all right, wait, let me see your passport. You're American?
Oh,
okay.
great.
You're good.
Fine.
You're good.
One of the good ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now let's go to your cousin, or now let's go to this guy. They're not going to differentiate based on what your nationality is. And I think that's something that we all really need to be wary of and careful of in this environment. So, I mean, it's really sad because going to the Southeast Asian aspect of it and the theme of isolationists, you know, there was a huge earthquake in Thailand and Myanmar last week, like a 7.7, I think more than 3,500 people today, at least the count, died from this. It affected Thailand. It caused tsunamis. I don't know if you saw videos of it, but it was pretty crazy. You'd see buildings like high rises completely topple. Yeah. You saw kind of connected buildings detached from each other. It was in the middle of broad daylight. I think it was in the afternoon.
Yeah. Everyone was out and about. Yeah. Walking around at work.
Yeah. You'd see these, you know, there's a lot of pools on rooftops, and they're just like, they're emptying out, right? Causing like tidal waves in the middle of a city. And all the while U.S. is doing this isolationist type of policy, whereas we probably should be helping as much as we could. Yeah. In that sense, you're basically ceding that to China essentially, and China just, I think they I forgot how much money they put into it, but they brought their military there to help Myanmar. Yeah. You know, they're doing things to help Thailand. You know, and basically you're creating Asia ex-USA now. Yeah.
Yeah, they America's, you know, all of our foreign policy, our trade policy, certainly, has created this situation where we've actually given the rest of the world a punching bag, right? We've set up, actually, ironically, kind of this like global unity. You look, Canada's not happy when Canada's not happy with the USA. What have we done here,
bro? China, Japan, and Korea got together.
Which is wild because
they hate each other.
For people who don't understand history or geopolitics, Japan and South Korea are huge U.S. allies. We have military presences in both of those nations.
That's right.
And certainly...
And Philippines and
Yeah, right? But somehow, right, this hasn't even been the tariffs. we have not exempted our allies. There's countries that are actively giving the USA aid on a military level, on a political level, in a global sense, and we still slap them with what, like a 34% tariff.
Yeah, and not only that, Vietnam is one of the saddest. After the war, after the atrocities the U.S. have done in Vietnam, now you're going to give them like one of the highest tariffs in all of the world. You know, for what? And again, you're ceding the entire South China Sea and like just the entire Pacific Rim. Basically, or you're abandoning them, and there's going to be a power vacuum, and who's going to suck that up? China.
Which is very interesting, right? Because I've done research on like the 1950s, 1960s, right, during the Cold War.
Yeah.
The whole point, like America's foreign policy at that time to combat the spread of communism, socialism, or just the USSR's influence, was to go out, and it was a charm offensive, right? It was supporting nations, or at least certain parties within those nations, to make sure that they would feel friendly towards the U.S. In fact, actually, one could argue that part of the passing of the Civil Rights Act in 1965 was part of that charm offensive, because one of the major PR sort of talking points of the USSR was that the U.S. is this racist, segregated nation. And the U.S. wanted so badly to show that, the American way of life is something that is worth exporting. So they passed the Civil Rights Act. When you're in a struggle for global dominance or hegemony, that's not the time to close in with an iron fist and try to prove yourself as tougher than other nations. That's the time when you reach out and you build alliances, you build allegiances, you, if anything, woo other nations to your side. And we just, with these tariffs, wiped out, potentially, if they stay in place, decades of allyship.
So what do you, this is just an open question. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, here domestically, if prices really do go up 50%, 60%, inflation has already been an issue. And I feel like it's almost at a fever pitch in the U.S. right now. Do you think there's going to be, of course, massive protests, but inflation has brought down a lot of empires. It's probably the one thing that it brought down the Romans, it brought down the Greek Empire, brought down England. It was part of the reason Hitler became to power. Like, inflation is the one kind of Achilles heel of each empire, no matter how strong they are. And if this actually does cause this rampant inflation that most economists are expecting, what's next, do you think?
It's kind of shocking to see it, but I do think this could be. I've been saying for a little while, in our lifetime, we'll probably see the U.S. slide out of that number one spot. It feels like it's starting to come. It could be this next 2 to 4 years when just. We've talked before on this podcast about the decline of the middle class and how, like, the American middle class really kind of doesn't exist anymore. And I would argue that a lot of that's because, those New Deal programs, those like mid 1900s programs that actually provided social services to lift people into the middle class, those have been stripped away. Right?
Yeah, those are gone.
Yeah, long gone.
Department of Education, EPA, anything like, now they're trying to strip away a lot of social programs.
Exactly. Right. And that was the stuff that was keeping people solvent.
Right.
Much less, barely helping the middle class, but at this point, really just keeping people out of poverty.
Yeah.
So I do think we're just gonna go further into, a country of the haves and the have-nots. Right? The people with a lot will continue to have more than ever before, and we're going to have more people than ever, renting paycheck to paycheck. I do wonder what American innovation is going to look like, because this country has shown, between H-1B and student visas and, green card holders, we're no longer trying to attract top talent from overseas. It's going to stay in their home nations or go to other nations that are more amenable.
Yeah, I sincerely hope that the next election, whether that be the midterms or the ensuing presidential election, people need to come out and make things change, or else I really am fearful of what is next to come, because I definitely do see some type of revolution if it stays the course.
I wish I had that much faith. I don't know if we're going to see a revolution, just because, as you pointed out, this is, I don't know if we have it in us, right? Because it's one thing if we see them, I don't know, lining up people and guns to their heads, but it's not like that, right? It's these silent little things of, DEI is bullshit. Okay, cool. Get rid of DEI. Oh, these visa holders, they're not really Americans. Okay, get rid of them. But, and slowly, degree by degree, taking away programs, right? What is it going to be? Social Security, Medicare. And I think it's going to be a death by degrees. I think that I don't know if it'll ever come to that boiling point of, this was a step too far. Now we've got to rise up.
So you think like the killing with paper cuts, essentially?
Yeah, death by 1,000 cuts.
Basically, that's what we're experiencing.
I would not be surprised. Like you said, midterms, maybe something can turn around. Next presidential cycle, something could turn around. But I don't know, man. It doesn't look good.
It takes a ballsy leader. We need one of those. I'd love to see some leader that could be able to stand up against the administration right now. I think Bernie is a good idea.
Bernie could do something.
But he's old.
He's also old.
You know what I mean? And I don't know. I have faith. I'm hoping that there can be something done. But again, it's like this glacier moving slowly, but about to hit the Titanic. Yeah. And I can see it in front of our eyes, and it's like, stop. But it just seems so crazy.